Good morning, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of Max and Katie Build Cars, where today we have a little bit of a job list to do on the Mini Cooper. And our job list today goes a little bit like this. We're going to start with draining the fuel tank of all the fuel. One job I didn't actually get done before, which I really need to do. The second job is to disconnect the ball joints from the steering hub so that when we do drop the front subframe out, it doesn't take the entire steering rack with it. And then the last job I want to do today is to go around the entire car. I want to go and strip all the wiring out, which is basically going to each end of the connectors, pulling them off whatever they're attached to, labeling what they're attached to, taking it out. I think that's going to be the best plan for this Mini because of how used and abused the wiring has been for this particular car. But super excited to get started, so let's go. Okay, first job then is to disconnect the fuel pipe and drain the fuel tanks. Yeah, in order to do that, I'm trying to get underneath the car and disconnect the hose from the rest of the fuel line here. The idea is it will then drip into the fuel tank and make it nice and easy. That didn't work, not even a little bit. Right, that last idea soaked and it didn't work. And very simply, what I'm going to do is actually disconnect the fuel line that comes into the back of the engine, into the fuel pump down here, the mechanical fuel pump. I'm just going to stick a little bolt in it just to stop any of the fuel from draining out anyway. Then I'm going to go underneath the car, pull the fuel line out and put that end into the jerry can, then pull the little nut out. Hopefully that will drain the fuel tank and also the fuel line that comes from the back of the tank. Now on later models, this is actually made easier by the fact that they included a drain plug, but I've looked everywhere, under the car, inside the car, around the fuel tank. I don't think this car has one, so we're doing it a difficult way again. Let's crack on. Cracking on is exactly what we did, and I did this initially by just disconnecting the fuel line into the back of the engine. One little screw and it simply slid off. I'm not too worried about getting fuel everywhere because this engine is obviously to come out and clean everything. And we can clean the ground, that's not a problem. If it does come out everywhere. I'm hoping, because we're doing it at the top, gravity will help us a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to take the bolt. This is the fuel line, which just disconnected from the back of the fuel pump here. I'm just going to plug it, just to stop any fuel from coming out, just like that. And then I'm going to get the clip. That was clamping it to the fuel pump, just to clamp it to the bolt. Just enough so I don't get too much fuel everywhere. Okay, now we're going to go underneath the car. So I pulled the fuel line from underneath the car, managed to only spill a little bit of fuel. So overall pretty happy with the result. I'm just letting it drain out now into our jerry can. Okay, and as we patiently wait for the fuel to drain out into the jerry can and maybe a quick play with the dog, let's check back in with our jobs list. And as you can see, that's the first item on the job list that we can tick off. Now let's go and disconnect the track rod ends. So this job is meant to be one of the more simple ones, which is just a case of disconnecting the track rod end from the wheel hub so we can remove this. And that's going to allow us to take it off so the steering won't get in the way when we drop the front subframe out. It's meant to be a particular simple job. This is the first time I've taken it on, and with everything in this Mini, nothing seems to be simple. I'm not expecting this to be any different, but we're going to give it a go anyway. So from all the research I've been doing, basically what you do is you undo this bolt, which normally will be all the way down, cramp all this together. But the main recommendation is to take this to the end, not all the way off to the end, because what we need to do now is we need to take our metal hammer and we need to tap it here, which basically shocks this loose. And this, leaving the nut like this, basically protects the threads underneath, which I'm not too worried about, to be honest, because I think I might just replace these. There might be a bit of an upgraded steering rack coming. We shall see. That's for a later episode. But for now, I'm going to try and disconnect these big hammer. It seems a bit brutal, especially if you're taking it on for the first time like I am. But in here, just give it a whack and that shocks it free. So let's see how this goes. Hey! So there we go, that's nice and loose now. So then, there's the nut off the top. Now, one thing that I did, which is this, do not do that if you plan on keeping the nut or keeping the track rod end. I'm replacing both, so I'm not too bothered. But basically what you've got to do is you've got to hit it here on this ring, and that shocks it free. So now, just repeat the step on the other side. Track rod end, off. That is now the track rod end disconnected from the wheel hub on the right hand side, so that's both sides done. So the steering rack now is completely disconnected from the front subframe. So now we can drop out the whole front subframe as one unit, and these will get in the way. And you see these are pretty perished, horribly beaten up, and I can see the ball joint on the inside is also pretty worn, and you know there's meant to be a protective sheath over this, there isn't one. So 2 new track rod ends. Let's add that to the list of things we need to order. Unfortunately, it is what it is sometimes with these things. All right, let's go back to the job list. That is another thing ticked off. And we're gonna start getting the electrics done. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna get some masking tape or plumbing tape, whichever one I find, a Sharpie, and go around and carry on labeling all the connectors. And then after I've labeled them, I'm gonna disconnect them from whatever they were attached to and start pulling the wiring out of the car. So let's crack on. Yeah, unfortunately saying crack on seems to be becoming a bit of a habit. I'll try and make it stop, I promise. I know you don't want to keep hearing it and hearing it. Maybe you do. Let me know in the comment section below. But for now, what we're doing is running around the front of the Mini, basically just disconnecting all the wiring, getting the wiring harness ready to be pulled out of the front, making sure that anything that was attached to the engine, wiring wise, is no longer attached. This is some sort of main earth. It's 3 wires that goes to a nut here. So I'm just going to label it earth because I don't know what the earth is for, but I'm guessing it's just to earth this and some of the parts of the main wiring loom together. So that's attached to a nut there. I'm just going to leave that there dangling. Next point, let's see, let's get rid of that cable tie. Starting to slowly move our way back. We'll disconnect everything here, then we'll disconnect everything in the back, and then I think the way that the loom runs, it goes up this A pillar here and then through the roof. So let's disconnect everything up front, let's disconnect everything in the back, and then figure out how they join together. And once I figured out how they join together, because I think it comes in 2 parts, clips together, once they're all disconnected, I can pull the wiring loom out. So just keep cracking on. So this main wiring loom, it sort of obviously comes from the front here. There's a fork here, which the top side of this fork sort of runs onto all the other bits that we've already disconnected, and then into the top of the fuse box, and then into the bottom of the fuse box goes everything else. But it seems like they've bridged all the fuses and the fuse box together, so what I'm gonna have to do is individually disconnect everything, and when we put it back together, just gonna have to figure out where it goes and what fuse goes where, because I don't think this is right at all. So there we go, let's just disconnect everything from there. 2 main bits of the wiring loom disconnected. Manky fuse box, which I'll leave on for now, just so it's stored out of the way, and that could be another day's problem. For now, let's keep pulling up wires to see what happens. being held in there by that there, which is for the wiper motor. So this is a wiper motor. Isn't actually connected, so at least I don't have to disconnect it. Undo that screw. And the rest of this main wiring loom, I believe, is pretty much disconnected. There's a couple of connectors there, which one here. Actually, I'll figure out where they go first. And then an earth there. So let's undo this one and the earth. Just hand tight. I don't think that needs to be torqued down or anything crazy like that right now. So it is wrapped around the back of there. Don't feel like disconnecting the motor just yet. We can leave that for now. That goes to there. That weirdly goes into the car. The rest of the loom is tucked under there. There's a bracket there which is on the inside of here, so that can't come off. I'm guessing that's a relay, either for the wiper motor or the indicators, I'm not sure. And that runs into the car. That can come that way. That's for the electric fan. So that runs the electric fan, okay. Cool. That's the electric fan. And that electric fan takes a live from in here and this relay box and this earth cable, so that earth cable can come out. I am sort of saying this out loud. It's not so much trying to talk through what I'm doing, what I'm not doing, but when I come to putting the wiring back on, I sort of have a track record of what went where-ish. All right, mate, what's wrong? What's up? I'm bored because you're playing with the Mini and I'm not. Anyway, let's keep going. Let's keep going. So that's all that bit out, which is a good thing. That's some sort of relay made in Taiwan. Disconnect everything. Maybe in the comments section below you can tell me what relay this is, where it goes and what it's for. That'd be a big help. That connected into the fuse box at the bottom somewhere. One more piece of wire off. Okay, what else can be disconnected from here? Not much. All of this connects into the car. There's another relay here, actually, which we can disconnect now. Some sort of relay. It's not labelled what kind of relay it is, but that went into that mounting bracket there. So maybe we can, again, source where this is and what it's for. I'll keep them up here, keep them safe. If you already have an idea, let me know in the comments section. That'd be a big help. So this is the temperature sensor. The temperature sensor goes in here, underneath the thermostat. That tells you how hot your engine's running on the dial in the middle. Now, from what I've seen, anyway, you've got an earth. So we've got an earth basically to the engine because that bolts straight into the metal block. And the temperature sensor is just, basically this is just a heated cable which expands with electricity put into it, obviously. But you can see here that they've tapped off of this to put in the wiper motor, which I don't know if you're meant to do that or not. And moving further down, they've also used it for what eventually connects to the electric fan. So this car having as many earth faults as it did and things sometimes working, sometimes not working, I think these might be the kind of reasons why, but I'm not sure. I'm not an auto electrician. So if you could let us know in the comment section below whether or not I'm onto the right sort of thing, or if this sort of stuff is okay and I'm to expect it on the new wiring loom. Any help with wiring in general, more than welcome, because I actually don't know how to do it. Pulling it out is relatively easy, just disconnecting and yanking it out of the car, isn't it? But putting it back together is where I'm going to struggle. So head to the comment section, let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, if I've made the right guess or if I'm off to a loose end. But either way, I'm going to carry on getting this wiring loom out. So I think the rest now, we'll go into the car, label the electrics up in the car and start pulling everything out of the front. Right, so In a Mini, your speedometer is basically the brains of the car. So most of the electricals that you're seeing as disconnecting the front actually connect to the back of the speedo. I've just been through, just disconnected the oil gauge here. I'm just gonna keep stripping the back of the instrument panel, because a lot of the wires that are coming through are connected to that. So it's just a case of pulling them off, seeing what we can pull through the front of the car and see what can't be pulled through. Maybe we just have to chop them for now. We'll see, but we'll keep going. So the wires in the back of the speedo are super easy to disconnect. It's just a case of pulling them gently, and they usually pop out with a bulb attached. Just pulling through, a lot of these are just light bulbs and different things connected to the back of the light bulbs. So I'm just pulling most of these light bulbs off. Seems to be doing the trick for the wiring loom. Some of these are just earth cables which are sliding off pretty easy. So that's coming off pretty well. Most of that is disconnected. I'm not going to do the final few things yet, because eventually I'm going to have to pull it out the front of the car anyway, so that can just stay there for now. I'm just going to disconnect all the stuff off the steering wheel, which all the connectors are just down here conveniently. So looks like the wiring loom is actually going to go up this pillar, but we're about to lose the light, and then tomorrow we're going to figure out how to pull the wiring loom out the front of the car. At some point in here there's a disconnect, so I can disconnect, pull the front wiring loom out, and then I think the connector will be for the rest of the wiring loom, which we can do finish all that tomorrow. So that's for our job list. That's 2 out of 3 items done so far. Tomorrow we'll do the last one. See you there. Yeah, it's a very good day, good morning or good evening wherever you are in the world, and we are back with continuing to strip the Mini interior, starting with the analog clock, which came out super easy actually. The rest is a case of basically we're going to go around the front of the Mini now and just slowly, bit by bit, disconnecting all the electrics in the front of the car, ready to have the wiring loom pulled out. Next thing we managed to disconnect is the starter solenoid, so that was nice and simple, 2 clips, and then it comes off the back of the steering wheel. We're going to leave that dangling there for now and see what we do with it later. Next thing to come off is this plastic panel on the back. I tried to unscrew it a couple of times, but the bolts are just fused in, so went with plan B, which was brute force, which meant just grabbing it from underneath and yanking it off. Then from the other side we can start pushing the rest of the wiring that we managed to disconnect so far in the front back through into the front of the Mini, ready for the whole loom to be pulled out. So a little update is we have removed the temperature sensor, we have removed the plastic shielding from in here, we've removed most of the wiring loom from the front of the car, which is a very good result. Now it's going to be a case of seeing how we pull the wiring out of here and then tracking it into the A-pillar and seeing where we go from there. So here I am on my back again under the car, just because there's 2 cables that connect to the gear shifter, which I think is for the reverse light, so I'm going to label them and disconnect them from underneath the car. It's the easiest way to get to them. BRB. So I didn't want this to happen, I wanted the connectors to stay on, but unfortunately they've just sort of snapped just by, well, I was going to say manipulating, but I barely touched them and they snapped. So there's a little nut here where they connect to, so I was trying to take out, but just touching the nut, it all just snapped. That's that one disconnected, and I'm going to see how I can prise them out from underneath. All I'm doing here is simply just getting my Stanley knife and gently prising away the rest of the wire that was connected to the gear shifter. Now I'm just basically moving all the wire to the back of the car, again ready to be pulled out. I've been a nasty girl, nasty. Right, that is those wires disconnect it.
Be easier with a ramp.
Be a lot easier with a ramp, but Kate said I'm not allowed to install a ramp in the garage. But so far it's been mission success. I've pushed all the wiring loom into the front, basically footwell of the car, and now I'm gonna have to try and find a way of getting it out of there. So hopefully this will be the last big job, and then we can focus on doing the wiring in the boot. I'm gonna try and manipulate all of this out of the front of the boot. Something tells me this is gonna be easier said than done. Because like all these bulbs and everything are not gonna fit through that tiny hole. I don't know how I'm gonna get this big bundle through that hole, and I don't know how I'm gonna get these off without having to individually pluck at everything. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna slice it there. The easy way, bearing in mind we're not keeping this wiring loom, been used and abused for years, so let's just get it out of the car. This is a really cheap, nasty way of doing it. I know that, I'm fully aware, but I'm not a mechanic, I'm therefore not an auto electrician, and I can't see any other way of getting it around this tiny little hole with everything still connected on the end. And I want everything still connected to the end, like the solenoid and stuff like that. So when I get the new wiring loom, I can roughly lay out the old wiring loom in parallel to it, sort of see where it goes before I try fitting it to the car. And you know, knowing my luck, I'll fit it backwards or upside down or something. Here goes nothing. A little saw. Let's get it out. My dad's an electrician. I know he's gonna be heartbroken to see this. Sorry, Dad. I love you. There we go. Absolutely smashed it. That is the entire wiring loom out of the front of the Mini. Amazing. Ooh, that was a lot of work, but worth it. Let's get this out. Okay, we are making some amazing progress, and all that's really left to do is to get the electrics out of the boot now. Hopefully it'll be a very simple process. I don't know if I need to move the fuel tank or not, I'm presuming so. But I'm going to start with the main battery cables, get them disconnected, and then I'll see what I need to do underneath the car to pull them out, or maybe I can just pull them out, I'm not too sure. Probably not, you know how things are with this Mini. Then it's a case of just pulling out the rest of the wiring loom. Hopefully from here I could pull the entire thing out from through the roof. So we'll see about that one, I'm not too sure, but just these last few bits to do and we're done. So the job list, we'll finally get it ticked off. These things always sound better in theory, but if you don't start, you don't finish, do you? So we're going to keep cracking on, as we always say, and we're going to do that now by basically disconnecting all the cables that used to connect to the battery, ready to pull the cables out. Okay, you don't have to worry about disconnecting the tail light because it actually burnt away. This is some sort of electrical overload at some point, and that goes behind the fuel tank. There's an earth point there. Alright, maybe I do need to remove the fuel tank. That's okay. What to do is... The thing with this Mini is every time you set up to do a job, you think it's going to be a relatively easy one, and it always corrects you in the best way possible. That bolt is not moving. Long story short, basically the bolt that holds the strap down, which holds the fuel tank in place, was the most stuck I've ever had a bolt, and it was an absolute pain to get out. This is just going to get the wiring cable out for me. Much easier. And that is the rear harness out. I did end up managing to get that bolt out, thankfully. It waited until I'd chopped to the wire, obviously, and then decided to come out. Unfortunately, it did mean I twisted up and bent all this, but we've managed to remove the fuel tank. Fuel tank was pretty good, just needs a clean. It's a bit dusty from all the road use. and in here it looks pretty good as well. Again, just needs a bit of a clean. But that's it. That's accidentally another job on the job list. The fuel tank out. The next step is to get under the car and pull out these main cables. Again, I'm on my back underneath the car, and this time it is simply just to disconnect the rest of these live cables. They're big battery cables. There's a couple bits here that have just screws into the bottom of the subframe, which hopefully we can get these screws out, and then these metal clips, I guess you can call them, that hold the cable to the bottom of the car, simply just gently bend open, and then we should be able to pull the entire cable out of the car. Let's see how this one goes. Yeah, boy. The last ones are coming out easy. Great news for us. Right, the rest is just these metal brackets the whole way down the car, just to gently pry them open a little bit and move the cable out the way. The first one out of the two cables out. Amazing. Oh, that's a heavy cable. I suppose it needs to be. Wow. There we go. There we go. Oh, get out from the back of the car now. Yes. Oh. Done. We are done. Knackered. Absolutely knackered. That is the wiring loom finally out. I guess you can call that the last item on the jobs list. Finally complete. That was so much work, but now we are ready. The last thing to do, drop out the front subframe. So we'll see you in the next episode. We'll be taking that on. I am also going to bring in some help for that one. I can't wait for you to meet him. But that was mission complete for today. Like, to say that we're amateurs at this, we're just cracking on. We're making such good progress. If that's not worth a subscribe, I don't know what is. But thank you so much for watching. Subscribe, like, comment. Let me know what you'd have done differently to help me out a bit in the future when it comes to especially putting stuff back together. I think that's going to be the real hard part. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.